You're listening to Sage Against the Machine. I'm Joshua.
I'm Isaac.
And we have a guest today. Want to introduce?
Beverly Cook.
Yeah, everybody knows you. We have listeners all over the place. This is weird.
Yeah.
This
is different for us. And I wanted to say thank you for coming on. Because, you know, the audience might not know, but we have political interactions and sometimes they are not exactly eye to eye. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I just wanted to say thank you for coming on because I just assume that, you know, this is sometimes viewed as a forum where people who, you know, could be seen as the establishment would not want to set foot into. And I just wanted to thank you for that. I think that's really awesome that you did. And I think it speaks actually a lot about the willingness of candidates to come out and speak with people in the community in a platform like this. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you for coming. All right, how's it going? Got a little cold there.
Yeah, I got a little cold running around D.C., came home. I know where I got it to.
Oh,
I
yeah?
know the lady in the airport.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and I tried to get away from her, but it was too late.
Oh, man. My son was playing that trick when we were traveling. He was just coughing his brains out so people would stay away from us. He's just looking at me. He's winking.
Yeah, now you might not be able to wear masks anymore. You'll be labeled as a Hamas sympathizer.
Who knows, man?
Yeah.
I guess
that's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, so we have an election coming up. Mm-hmm. You haven't had enough yet.
Well, I think this particular time that we're dealing with, I was gave me second thoughts about what I would do in the next coming years, and I really felt like I was thinking about what would I feel like if I did not run on purpose, you know, like just walked away. That I think to me would have been an easy way out and not fair to the people. So I reconsidered and decided that I really needed to finish. You know, and if I get chosen, that's great. And I think it's the best choice for the people. But if I don't, then that's their choice too.
Right.
You know, so I can't. I have to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is it that you feel like you didn't finish yet that you had started?
Well, there's several things. One of the things was trying to improve the workplace climate and being more trauma aware. And that was more difficult and took longer than I anticipated. I thought it was a no-brainer. But it's a very sensitive topic for some people. And so you have to move, you know, at the speed of trust, I guess you would say. And so I've had to maybe plant those seeds and then wait and see who grabbed onto it and who was willing to work towards it with me, because it's not a one-woman deal. I mean, this takes a group of people. And so that is, again, we had passed a TCR, I think I can't remember if it was 2019 maybe, or prior, to support and encourage trauma-informed awareness and practices within the entire organization, not just the health clinic, but the whole tribe. And we did that, but I neglected to interject any accountability. Like how would the programs do that?
Enforcement or
allowing them a budget line. You know, we're encouraging a budget line. Like every year you have to have some kind of training, or when you do interviews, you could ask people or let people know this. We support trauma-informed awareness, and so we would like that to be part of your training. And what do you know? Maybe you already know or have been trained, that sort of thing. But to put a little bit more structure into the TCR. So anyway, at this point right now, it's just getting restarted. We've hired. The executive director's office has hired a consultant to do a systems change within the tribe. So that's still ongoing. We just had our first directors meeting about it, going step by step, slowly but surely. It'll take a while. So there's that. There's things, and there's the border crossing bill that we've been working on. We actually renamed it. It was the Border Crossing Parity Act, and we're renaming it to the McCarran-Walter Technical Corrections Act.
That's an interesting
Who
name.
named that?
Well, he named the mistake where they added the 50% requirement.
Yeah.
It wasn't there in the Jay Treaty,
Yeah.
but as they've codified it through the years, that was first. The First Amendment, I think it was in the 1920s, was Indians can pass freely,
Right.
but not if they're adopted. And then it went to, but they have to be 50% if they're born on the Canadian side. And so we're trying to get that 50% blood quantum requirement out of there so that we can move forward with other things. So, but anyway, when we said Border Crossing Parity Act, some politicians got a little bit nervous about that, and especially with this administration, border crossing. What do you mean?
It's been in the news lately, kind of messy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you listen to it, but we tend to talk about the border issue a lot. It's bad.
Yeah, and you don't know what they're going to do next or how far they're going to take it. But anyway, so we thought if we changed the name to something benign like that, that it would be easier for them to understand. Instead of getting stuck on the border crossing issue, they would be able to look at the 50% blood quantum is antiquated, it's archaic.
It's eugenics, that's the word for it.
Yeah, and it was inserted during the termination period, and so there's a lot of connotation to it. So anyway, that's not finished yet. And of course the land claim isn't finished yet. But my real concern that a lot of people don't talk about is how this administration, the changes that they're making can affect families. And so the FAFSA thing is another one that we've decided that we're going to litigate or sue for an injunction on that. But we're also facing challenges against the Indian Child Welfare Act still. And the current challenge is based on, the violation of Equal Protections Clause in the Constitution. And that's a little bit different than what they had gone after initially. So we won that first case in the Supreme Court, but this one makes me nervous, especially with this administration. It seems lately the Supreme Court is getting its footing a little bit more. I don't know, but I'm hopeful. But that's another thing that I really, I keep raising my hand going, but ICWA is still in danger.
Yeah.
And so even though this administration says, we're not attacking Indian tribes or nations or anything like that, the policies that they're setting forth very well do.
Particularly budget things
are
a direct attack on us.
The whole Medicaid thing and the shutting down of the
the clinics
all over
requiring
Indian country.
a work requirement in order to be. But then they say, but that doesn't affect Native nations or Indian nations. They say that, but.
Well, Donald Trump is known for being very trustworthy and honest.
He tells the truth all the time, too.
Constantly. He's the most beautiful truth teller.
Big, beautiful.
Big, beautiful.
Yeah.
He's big, beautiful. Yeah.
How much do you have to play nice publicly? Because they may watch this.
Well, I mean, you can be nice and still tell the truth. I mean, and we just had a visit with Elise Stefanik's legislative assistant, and they're working on it. As you know, she introduced the bill to pass it along. And so then somebody, Faith Tuttle is her name. She she said, well, there's somebody else is another legislator, another committee who just wants to take a look at it, you know, make sure that everything's okay. And I said to her, because it's been so long, and I know everybody doesn't agree with it. However, I said to her, we wouldn't be in this situation if we weren't run out of the Mohawk Valley, you know, our own homeland. We wouldn't be in this situation. We wouldn't be in this situation if the United States and Canada hadn't put that border right through our territory. We wouldn't be having, you know, problems like this if we had just been left alone, you know, in the first place.
Right.
And I thought I said it really nice, like very plainly and just matter-of-factly. So I don't know, but her cheeks got kind of red.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh no.
Well,
but you know, you want to tell the truth,
Yeah.
and I guess if it offends or startles people, I can't help that. You need to be able to talk truth to power, and you know, we're fighting for our identity, our, you know, our land, our culture, everything that is us is what we're focused on fighting for and standing up for, and sometimes it gets frustrating.
Well, yeah, I've noticed a shift in, like, as someone who reads the news every day, you know, on the radio, I've noticed a shift in the rhetoric from, like, the right. And, like, Elise Stefanik's a good example. As she was normal 10 years ago. She was just a Republican. She was just kind of conservative, which is fine.
A moderate Republican.
I have conservative views, some. So does Isaac occasionally. But it switched to that attack kind of language, and I noticed they're all starting to do that. And what's that like? Do you have to deal that privately, or is that just something for the TV on?
That's difficult to say. I remember when Elise Stefanik first ran, Chief Connors and I had gone to a event or a fundraiser, I guess it was, and John Boehner was there. You remember him?
Oh, yeah.
And he said, at that fundraiser, he said, is Donald Trump my first choice? Heck no. Is he my second choice? Heck no. Is he my third choice? Heck no. Is he my fourth choice? Heck no.
Did he get laughs finally?
People were just like kind of quiet, and then there was just like this little bit of giggling, but he said the whole purpose, the sole purpose of getting him in there is to get control of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
That was the whole purpose. And at that time, she was just young and open and, you know, it seemed like eager to learn and, you know, interested. And she came up and did the Code Talkers event and made a lot of friends, and, you know, just by being open and so enthusiastic about honoring the Code Talkers. And then it changed. And Sub-Chief Agnes Jacobs and I went to another event in Malone a few years ago when, let's see who was running. I don't think it was Elise that was running, but she came to speak on behalf of it was a midterm selection. And I was genuinely stunned by the tone that she took in her rhetoric against Joe Biden at the time.
Yeah.
And it just was like, why do you have to talk like that? Why do you have to be like that? Without, you know, you can promote your own platform.
Right.
You don't have to call people names, you know.
Right.
I mean, to me, it says more about them than it does about the person that they're calling down. But yeah, she definitely changed, but we try to find common ground.
Yeah.
We can, you know.
I mean, they're the great colonizers. There's only so much we
you
can
know,
do.
this land claim settlement isn't for us. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't believe that she's doing it for us.
Right.
I believe
I
that
would never
it's
believe that.
for her constituents, you know, so
Yeah.
that they get their back taxes paid and, you know, all that.
Since we're talking about the land claim now, obviously Josh and I were pretty staunch opponents to the settlement. Vocalized that, you know, I vocalized it at meetings and everything, as did many people. So at this point, Where I'm just interested to see, like outside of a formal setting in an SRMT meeting, the reasoning behind, and I understand the thing about the Supreme Court and everything, but I still am not sure where all of council came from to come to that consensus, you know what I mean, about why this was the best path forward to do the settlement.
So just prior to me getting on council, the decision, well, a couple years prior, the council at the time had decided to withhold the revenue share. And they did that for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, and accumulated the $60 million. And Governor Cuomo called one of the tribal chiefs and said, we want our money. And the tribal council replied, we want our land back. And so that's where it started, was to put the land claim back on the table because it had fallen apart in 2005 with the Sherrill decision. And that was it. While the negotiations fell apart, the court case continued, and Judge Kahn made a really bad ruling, I think, about dismissing all the other claims, including this area B, and all the other parts of the land claim at the time. So while we were not doing anything, we were losing. And so getting the negotiations back on the table was our only best bet because we had lost everything except for the Hogansburg Triangle. And that is in a remedy phase. So if we go back to court, if we did away with the negotiations, didn't get that back on the table, then all we were going to be arguing about in court was what to do about the Hogansburg Triangle. Were we going to get retribution? Were we going to get title back? None of that was guaranteed. And so it didn't make sense to let land just slip away. Even though we had to make compromise, we got at least the ability to regain a lot of the land back for our tribal members. And so that's why, because we were in a losing situation.
Now, and I heard this, I heard that exact thing said many times, and I mean, it wasn't just that, and this is from my understanding of it, is that, entering the negotiations, it didn't just have to be that. It could have went to trial. That's something that could have happened.
For the Hogansburg Triangle.
Well, but the way that everything is read, it's not that it would just be that, because what we're doing is in the settlement, we're extinguishing any claim to what's out in Messina and Barnhart, the mile square. We're giving that up, right?
Yeah, it was already given up.
Well, maybe, but you had the decision in 2022 with Judge Kahn where he said, there was violations of the Non-Intercourse Act. Was it 6 times? 7 times? Something like that. So when you walk into court and you have that behind you, you already have a lower court federal judge saying, yeah, you directly violated the Constitution. Did you guys not think that was something that would be, pretty good leverage and for us going in?
You mean for those other areas?
Mm-hmm.
The way that I understood it at the time, what the thinking was that Sherrill case had come down and there was no way that we were going to get Messina or Fort Covington at the time back.
Once
that was their.
And I don't know if you remember, but I've brought up McGirt before in meetings and stuff, and we don't have to get I understand there are differences in it, but I think that and I've spoken with some lawyers about this, is that it's not exactly analogous to what we're doing here, like for our land claims, but I think that there are legal minds out there who do think that you could kind of, start to use that legal reasoning to be able to bolster, our own case here. Did you guys ever think about that, to try and
McGirt opened, that was really exciting. Our own decision was really exciting. And I don't think it means that we can never go there. And in terms of appeals for any decisions that maybe were made prior, the claim has to be settled, before appeals can be made. It has to be completed. And then that takes another hard look at, is there anything that we can do in keeping in mind the decision that came down in 22.
We've had, yes, in like particularly, I did it again, particularly.
It was lovely.
Enunciate.
What was it that I kept, citizenry or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just enunciate.
It was really bad. But,
smoke another cigarette. It'll
hey,
help.
back off. So when we were, so we're getting into, that mindset of communication, right? So, Josh has said before, and I've said it too, is that sometimes it seems as though the communication doesn't exactly connect between council and the community. So do you think that played a major role in because there was the march against the settlement and, the vocal opposition and all of that. Do you think that you guys missed an opportunity to be able to, in some way that you kind of wish that you guys would have been able to, just made the communication between the council and the community better to lessen any of the oppositional stuff?
I wish I knew how. We put as much of the information out there in all types of forms.
Right.
Our legal counsel did a podcast. We did things on ATV, our membership portal, which I know some people find cumbersome, to get to, and then our public meetings that we did, we did a lot, I thought. But people are going to want to hear what they want to hear. I personally went to the Nation and talked to them about it and tried to get them to understand, because you could see the rift forming, and it was particularly distressing to me, to see that happen. And it was something that I personally tried to head off years ago. And
so you saw it coming.
I saw it coming, and I just said it would be a lot better, a lot easier if you could just withdraw. The reason that they were in the claim to begin with, I don't want to speak for them, but at the time we know that, the legal pathway was there at the time. And then the door shut with Cheryl, and they just stuck with it. And so that put them in a precarious situation. I thought that it was the best thing for them to withdraw. But then they were having their own
the internal stuff.
They didn't follow their own protocol, and it's biting them in the ass.
Well,
and
I don't want to judge or anything like that. I know it was hard, and I know.
Hey, we have a real politician in here right now.
I went there.
Yeah.
I went there. I tried. I was received. And, in subsequent times, I wasn't received so well, but I know that the energy in there was getting. There was, I don't know. To me, it seemed like a lot of confusion, and not very good communication. So, if we could have done better, I don't know what else we could have done. I just think people were going to hear what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
From your end, I think you did everything. 1 second. To communicate. Some people could still not agree, but it's not because they didn't understand your point of view. So I think that's fair. The real question I had, what was the impetus to not hold another referendum? Just because, again, 18 years had elapsed, and that's a lot of time. That's like, I watch international news, and they say the same thing. Well, they voted for Hamas. Yeah, 18 years ago. So like all those people are like, half the ones that voted are dead. And
Pretty much all the men are dead.
well, in Palestine, not here.
No,
we last a
Here's
little.
the- Here
In
too.
Palestine.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's
Here's
true, too.
Putin. Here's Putin over there. It's
What are you saying, buddy?
it's just quit that smoking. You're not long for the world, bud.
Yeah.
So yeah, what was just the impetus to not host another referendum?
Because there was a referendum held back then, that I know that I made that decision at the time. My parents made a decision at the time, and you would hope that would carry forward because of the way that people were thinking at the time. Of course, things changed. I can only really speak for myself.
That's fair.
Okay. People were not understanding. I didn't think that they were. I didn't think that they had enough information to make a decision on the referendum, and that could be. I don't know. Like it felt like what we were trying to get across to people about this is going to be a losing game that we're not willing to lose, that I'm not willing to lose or risk at the time. And because we already had a referendum, because people were fully informed at the time and made the best decision to go ahead with the settlement, even with the extinguishment language in there. And I also felt that we had removed that language from this settlement, and that to risk losing this settlement because of misinformation or whatever was being spread at the time just wasn't worth it. So there was a consensus reached, a vote, informal vote taken amongst everybody, and that was the decision that came out of it, was not to hold another referendum, that there was one, that this was probably a better deal than what they voted on the last time. There was no extinguishment language. There was more land. Yes, there was less money because they were going to give us a $30 million dump. And that was removed from the settlement. But we got more land back and more the possibility of more land back. So for us, it was just too much to risk losing.
Are there, so when you say that they didn't, understand enough, do you mean the community?
The community.
Isn't that what we should be doing in a democracy, though? I mean, shouldn't we be letting, even if, you have people who can not read who are able to vote in U.S. elections, shouldn't we be doing things shouldn't we be doing as many referendums as possible to have as close to a direct democracy as we can? Josh brought up, it's basically an entire generation has not had their say, on that. So I can see where the community would come across and say, well, that's not your place to make that decision for us. That should go back to the community. And I think that I can understand their righteous, anger about that. So, do you see that?
I understand it. Yeah.
But you don't agree?
I don't know. I think if I felt like there were open minds and that there really was communication happening, then I might have been more willing to risk it. But to me, it was a risk. And from the feedback that we were getting, I wasn't confident that people were going to make a decision based on facts.
But there are different interpretations of what the settlement was going to entail. And again, like that's where I'm coming from is ultimately, because I never heard like when Cheryl was brought up, and I did research into it. I talked with some lawyers about it, and Cheryl was a matter of equity. Okay, so when you get into that kind of stuff, it's and yes, the triangle now is more Mohawk than it is, non-native. Mm-hmm. But we're talking, so like there are those legal theories that people didn't get to hear. You know what I mean? So when you say that you were concerned that people wouldn't make a decision based on the facts, or what was best, when they're not presented with those other theories, that seem to be, in my mind at least, something to be explored and talked about publicly. I mean, do you see that how that could be interpreted as it not being really as basically information gatekeeping, so like you're not giving everybody a full spectrum of views to be able to make a decision from. Do you see what I'm going with there?
Well, I mean, we were giving our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Other people were giving their perspective, and other people were giving their perspective, I think. But I don't feel that we were, for instance, that question, that possibility of having that, those discussions didn't occur. Like even when we had the open public meetings,
mm-hmm.
that didn't come up. And that was a little bit disappointing, for me anyway. So I don't know if the questions, and it's not like we didn't mention Cheryl. I believe Cheryl was explained, but if people had questions about it, those weren't the ones that were asked. It was a lot of, to me, it was a lot of rhetoric, and there was a lot of it focused on the extinguishment. And there isn't extinguishment, but yet we couldn't get that across to anybody that there is not extinguishment in the settlement. There's a promise to dismiss the case mm-hmm. after, but that's different than relinquishing all right, and especially a right that tribal council doesn't have to give. We don't have that right.
Mm. So see that you know what? That's something that I think we could clear up here then. So if this settlement if the settlement agreement is signed, that means that there's no extinguishment language. So we could go back for the mile square after.
In the settlement, the mile squares, they were out of the settlement mm-hmm. before it got brought back on the table. Those were negotiated out prior. And then they wanted, in the negotiations, they wanted us to not be able to take land into trust. Mm-hmm. And we said, you can't do that. That's a federal statute. That's mm-hmm. a federal right that we have to do that. And so we maintained that. And I don't think that to your point, that I don't think, to my satisfaction anyway, the whole McGirt issue hasn't been fully explored in that regard.
Yeah.
But that's
why I'm just for this settlement. There, you said there's no extinguishment. So if this settlement is ratified through Congress, does that mean that we still could eventually go after the Miles Square in Messina and Fort. We could still, in the future, bring a case to try to get those back.
It's already been negotiated out, and in the settlement, unless properties are brought into trust, they remain under the jurisdiction of the state.
So under the Seven Nations Treaty, we are not able to bring back a case for those parcels of land after the settlement is ratified.
No, it would have to, the way that I understand, I'm not a lawyer, but the way that I understand it, it would have to be in trust. Unless there was some other strategy that was formalized that I don't know would work.
Especially
So under the settlement, we can't go back after any of the Seven Nations Treaty land.
Yeah.
Treaty land. The parcels,
The parcels.
The parcels, the Mile
Right.
Square, any
Yeah.
of that.
No.
The grass, the meadows, we can't go back after that.
No.
Okay.
Don't you love how lawyers just have fancy? It's a cult. It's a cult. It's a cult. Law is a
Don't go
cult.
off on the, don't
Law
go
is a
off on
cult.
the lawyer thing again.
Law is a cult. It's a religion.
Okay, so I think we hit on the land claims.
Yeah, we
quite a
beat that
bit.
to the ground.
Yeah, I think we're good on that.
So everyone wants to run for change. What are they missing? That's what everybody always runs on. Everybody always runs on.
That's my question.
You didn't.
Well, I'm like Elon Musk, but better looking.
I had to do it.
I mean, that's my question. What do you want to change?
Mm-hmm.
Continue the fight? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. Continue the fight. My thing, though, is that I think that my focus is unique, and I think that it would leave a big hole if I wasn't able there. I wasn't there and able to pursue my perspective, which is primarily family, individuals. That's my focus. So healing, wellness, all of that.
And you're a caregiver, right? I mean, that's your background as a medical provider.
Yeah, and I put up a post today to say that, the boards that I sit on, the national boards that I sit on, are National Indian Health Board, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Agency or Administration, and the Office of Violence Against Women, Tribal Leaders Advisory Committee, and the IHS self-governance. So that's my thing, and if I'm not there, I feel like Akwesasne anyway loses a seat at the table. Other things that I've championed as well was the men's program at Seven Dancers, because federal government doesn't see fit to fund men's programs. Even though their focus is violence against, domestic violence.
They just want to build more
and all
prisons.
that. Yeah,
because it works, right?
Lock up Indian men.
Yeah. So my advocacy was to help them, because they were asking, the men in that were working in that program were asking for help, to be able to help men coming out of treatment or incarceration and their sons, their sons. So anyway, that was one place. Sewaguato, the recovery drop-in center, was another one that I argued for, to fund. And Holistic Life Foundation is another one that I
have heard of them.
Yeah, that I've always supported and encouraged us to continue to fund them, because these things to me are solution-based as opposed to just band-aiding the real problems that still go on in our community. The kids that aren't fed, the kids that are, people are mean to them, meaning their caregivers. There's all kinds of consequences and fallout from all kinds of trauma.
Yeah.
And so that I feel like, who's going to do that then?
What do you feel are our biggest challenges in that area right now?
Funding.
Funding.
Funding and being able to pay providers in those fields what they're really worth.
Yeah.
It's just, that to me is the biggest part, the hardest part about recruiting and about retaining people in those fields. They're tough fields. They're emotionally draining. And I think we don't, and it's not because we don't want to, it's just the way it is right now. But every chance we get, we try to bolster, pay or benefits or something, and try to be creative about it. But yeah, and our teachers, our ELC teachers, it's all important. It's all important work,
right.
And the political work is important. I mean, that we rely on that, whether we like to or not. It's the reality. It's the reality that we deal with. So until we can, fund these programs ourselves, we're stuck playing the game.
I've noticed when I was kind of screwing around running. John Bigtree was supposed to run, but he didn't show up that day.
I heard that.
What I wanted to throw a needle in people's ass a little bit about is I've noticed a tendency to copy services of the outside, even services theirs that don't work very well, like their social services. For instance, our social services, I've had personal experience with. Not a fan. I think it looks the wrong way. I don't think the workers really know what they're doing. I think we tend to get the garbage from Franklin County that wouldn't fit in Franklin County. And what do we do about that? Is that what's stopping us from developing our own homegrown systems that might fit our culture better? That, often we copy systems that don't even work on the outside, yet we copy them because maybe there's money there or something. So what's stopping us from rolling our own? It's a complicated question.
Yeah, it's complicated, and it's one that I think oftentimes people think that, and even when I first got into office, I thought I was going to have a lot more influence over things than you actually do, because you get to a position where now you're hands off, because you have other obligations. But the relationship that our social services department has with New York State is unique. And they actually give our social services department a lot more leeway than they do anyone else. I think that communication, dialogue is needed all the time. And I know that in situations, especially where families and children, parents and children are involved, it seems rarely do both parents walk away happy.
Right.
So other than being able to express how you feel or introducing those unique ways of doing things, or maybe old ways of doing things into this system, would take a lot of patience and a lot of talking. And unfortunately, the dynamic is when a person gets mad and angry and assertive, the other party resists, and then everything shuts down.
Slows things down.
Nobody hears each other. Nobody's understanding each other. Nobody's really listening. And that's probably as far as I can go with that. That's just how it is. I know that they actively try to be more aware, trauma aware, trying to give people more input. But like I said, it doesn't always.
Yeah, that was not my experience at all.
It doesn't always.
It was with Franklin
across.
County, by the way. Franklin County is great. Go to court in Franklin County. I give people that advice. Like, go to court there. You'll get a fair meeting, which is terrible because we've gone through a lot of work to develop these systems, and yet somehow here we are again.
Yeah.
So are we, okay, as we were talking about this, it almost seemed like you were coming back around to because, and unfortunately, and I think you would probably agree. A lot of times it comes back to funding. Like how can you do these things? And we talked a bit about Indian Health Services before, and with this current administration, I know that is something I'm particularly concerned about. You guys are in the inside. You get to see it already. I know it's only been 4 months with this
4 months of hell.
person, in there. So, I've already seen they've, initially approved like a $900 million cut to, Indian Health Services. What do you think? Like, is that? I mean, like, should we be like how concerned should we be for our own clinic? You know what I mean? Like, are we looking at big cuts there, or, will things be able to stay at least the status quo if the big beautiful bill, goes through and all that? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, like you guys get to see, you have a better insider view of it. So is the clinic going to be okay, or?
I'm concerned.
Okay.
I'm concerned. It started out with, and they do these things like, we're going to make these changes, but it doesn't affect the tribes.
Right.
We're going to make these changes, but it doesn't affect the tribes. But we are going to have work requirement for Medicaid,
Mm-hmm.
and the tribes will not be exempt from that. So people who don't have a car to get to work or live,
The people who need it most.
yeah, how are they
Yeah.
going to get to work if they don't have a ride? It's not like we have public transportation here.
Yep.
It's not like if you don't have, a degree, you may not be able to qualify, for certain jobs here. I think that could hurt. The other thing that happened was with Medicaid, there was the ability for the mechanism where Medicaid would automatically recertify.
Yes.
So
Yep.
people didn't have to do that. Then there was the unraveling of
Yep.
that. So now people have to apply for Medicaid.
Well, that's why we have to reapply every once in a while.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah.
And then guess what? Some people aren't doing now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. So that means health services has to lean on them to reapply. Whether it's reminders or when the patient needs a referral, they have to get at least sign up for Medicaid before they can get the
Yep.
referral. But health services has enrollers on site,
Yes,
so it's
and they're great.
convenient. Yeah, and so they can get them back on it. But people, especially men, I don't know about you guys, but they don't go to the doctor
I'll go when
unless
a part falls off.
yeah, unless it's a dire situation. So there are some people who have not been re-enrolling. That third party, we call that third party income. That third party income is what has enabled health services to function and to continue to operate unaided for the last 12 years when Affordable Care Act came about. So now that they're trying to chop away at that and trying to, cut back on the funding for Medicaid, the third-party revenue for health services is going to be less. And I don't know if you remember, kind of young, if you remember way back when, health services for referrals ran out of money in October.
Yeah.
And they would have to borrow money from the tribe. And sometimes the tribe was, they needed $4 million one year. I think they needed $7 million to make it to the end
Right.
of the year. They hadn't had to do that since Affordable Care Act came about. So for right now, our health services is doing fine.
Okay.
But there are things happening where people are getting furloughed. People are taking early retirements because they just want to be done with it.
Yeah.
And they also fired a lot of people that were on probation. But what others did not consider was that many of the people who were on probation might have just got a promotion.
Right.
Or they may have switched jobs
Uh-huh.
and were really experienced people.
Had been there years, but just moved up with
moved
it.
up. And then they got they got let go. And so that's why they had to hire some of those people back, because they were like, oh, yeah, all right. So they knew what they were doing here, and we actually need them. So that kind of thing is worrisome. Programs have had to go back, and we call it scrubbing their proposals, scrubbing their contracts and all the paperwork to take out trigger words like diversity, equity.
Speak the Newspeak citizen.
Yeah, all there's like 200 words that they have to take out.
Climate scientists can't say climate.
No, climate change, no. Environmental justice, no, you can't say that either.
Yeah.
Reproductive justice, you can't say that either.
That's one of the...
I'm glad the rights for free speech.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all about it.
So that's taken time away. And then there's this new requirement that you got your proposal submitted, it was approved, your award has been approved, and now you need to do drawdowns. Well, you've already got the award, so you should just be able to say, I need, this much money, and they send it to you. But now when you say, I need this much money, they say, why is that? Justify it. So you have to, justify the spend.
Yeah.
And that takes long. So then somebody's got to write that up if they don't already have it in stock, and then send it, and then wait for them, the reduced number of workers on that end, to review it, and then make the decision to, okay, we can release the reward. So the funding can slow and has slowed in some areas.
Probably, so I think it's probably fair to say we're not fans of Elon Musk.
No.
But, in my mind, it kind of seems to me like that was part of the plan, right? Was to, if you slow down the funding, people give up. They, it's just another tactic by the government to, ultimately take the money away.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I know that you as a healthcare provider, that I kind of figured that would be close to your heart. And, we really do. We are people in the community who are really afraid, about what's going to happen in the clinic. And it's good that we get to hear a little bit of that, the technical stuff that we don't usually get to hear. I don't know, the scrubbing, it's absurd, but...
So the border. Let's go back to the border. I do notice we have police, and how they're forced to cooperate. I guess I don't know if how forced are they to cooperate with that sort of thing, like ICE. ICE is quickly becoming kind of like a secret police, and it's very scary. As someone
do you think they're even ICE agents?
I don't even know.
How do we know?
We don't even know.
We don't know.
They don't wear their identification. They're wearing masks.
Like, I think to myself, what if somebody like
that... They could be the Proud Boys.
What if they walked into the school? What if they walked into school and they want to pull a kid out? And then what lengths do I go to as an individual? Because I'll go to jail. It's okay.
Yeah.
But, I don't know how many of me there are. So, like, what are we looking at?
Our effort has been still to maintain the protocol that if any outside agency comes onto the territory, that they have to make themselves known to the tribal council, and and definitely with our police department, that they have to let them know why they're here. And sometimes you get a new guy that just comes racing in. It usually gets corrected pretty quickly because the community's on it, and they let us know. They let our chief of police know. So that's the protocol that we're adhering to, and there are meetings coming up with those agencies to reiterate that, and also to say that we have a police department that is fully capable of patrolling the border and securing the border. We want our own community members to be safe, and I feel for the families that are coming over here and escaping, whatever.
It's got to be rough, right, to brave that river?
Yeah, and to make that choice and that decision, that's your your best outlook.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be terrible. However, in that sweep, they have picked out some very, very, very bad actors that also come through there.
Sure.
So you don't know for sure
Yeah.
who's who. So we try to keep in contact with Border Patrol, making sure that people are treated fairly, that women are screened for, exploitation across the border and trafficking and that kind of thing. So we try to stay on top of that. If ICE comes in here full force, I imagine that there's going to be some resistance to that.
Some?
I think there's
Like-
going to be a lot.
Yeah.
Oh,
On
from
an unofficial
councils?
side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unofficially as well.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Unofficially, we-
There always is. So anyway, that's all I can say
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that
Yeah.
is that there are meetings coming up in the very short term with federal agencies to discuss that, and also to convey to them who we are, like who we are as people. We're not
Yeah.
villains, we're people just trying to live here, just trying to live in peace here. And, just like they have bad actors every once in a while, we have people who make poor decisions. And then they suffer the consequences of their poor decisions. We try, and then, then we have a whole nother arm of us that tries to rehab that, and help people, through that, and families and such. But it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's
For sure.
complicated. So we're making a concerted effort to communicate that and to have our people. I would rather our tribal police take care of those things than to have Border Patrol or people that don't know who we are, don't recognize us, and treat us all the same.
Right.
Because you brought up something that, I think a lot of us want the outside to understand is that, we do have some people who do some things, whatever. But to me, it always seems like our entire community gets tagged with that, frequently by the outside. I'm quite sure you saw the questions that Tom Homan was hit with, which seemed like planted questions.
Very
to me.
pointed.
Yeah,
Very
pointed.
specific.
That was. I mean, come on, that was a plan. It had to have been. Clearly, he has some preconceived notions about us. I know he was with Border Patrol and all that. Is that so? And then in line with like the Doge cuts and that thing of them having to come back and hire other people. Do you know if, say, Border Patrol or Homeland Security, did they lose people, or like people that you guys were in contact with who had experience who are now gone, who, and then you have to bring in new blood, and that's something that's been lost, the institutional knowledge?
There's always that, especially with Border Patrol,
Sure.
because they get rotated
Yep.
from the southern border and then up here. And so there are periodic sessions where they get cultural training so that they learn about these things, who's traversing the border and why, and who we are, what our history is, and what our culture is, and what our sacred items are, and
Yes.
how to recognize them.
Yes.
So the Border Patrol, the Customs and Border Protection agents, and CBSA usually participate in those trainings all together. And our people are involved in that. Our people meaning community.
Right.
People are involved in that and do that training. So that's a constant thing because of the constant turnover in people. They have like core people who are here all the time, but they get agents rotated around.
Yeah.
So that's a concern, and it's something that we want to convey to Mr. Homan, about
Yes.
who we are. And
We get you.
yeah, you may have lived near here, but you
Oh, I'm sure he has a lot of ideas about
Yeah.
us. I've heard them in Potsdam.
Yeah.
Like, isn't it dangerous? Dude, all the murders are out here.
Yeah. I mean, He's from Carthage, right?
Carthage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know, in the grand scheme of things, Carthage isn't so far, you know what I mean? But it's also like, it's, you know, I think things get a little more exaggerated the farther you get away from us, you know. And I know he was Border Patrol and all that, but still, it's, you know, it's just the myth building that's always negative towards us, it seems, you know. That's an issue that I think a lot of us see. And that's one of the things that we've been concerned about with this increased presence of, because, you know, like I said, I work up in Gunyaga now, but it's visible to me. You see way more Border Patrol. You see much more CBP.
I had a drone in my yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was right there. I got on picture.
Yeah.
I
know 2 people who have seen the Black Hawk, like right
Yeah.
I heard about that.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Canadian Black Hawk.
And these are people who you know what I mean? I trust them. I know that they're not you know, so like those things are, and all I can see is just they keep, you know what I mean? It's getting closer. They're trying to, you know, soften us up to get comfortable, and then they'll start to really harass people. So I know that that's something that we're all concerned with. Those meetings with the other agencies, I'm guessing those are internal meetings with council and them. And would you guys give updates to the community about, you know, what came out of those, if you're able?
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a release and an explanation of what we sensed from it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right.
I think we're getting hot in here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're running again. Tell them why to vote for you again.
Because I bring something unique to the table. I bring 12 years of experience in dealing with, you know, people in the other politicians. I never viewed myself a politician. That's not why I got into this. It was to make change in the tribal organization itself, to be more, you know, sensitive and caring and all of that, but also to shore up some programs within the community. And it was always my contention, and maybe one of my pain in the neck goals while I was still working at health services, was that we shouldn't just be 9 to 5. Our services, mental health or whatever it is, needs to be broader than that, because people don't get messy between 9 and 5. They get messy at 3 a.m.
Yep.
And we need to be accessible, and we need to be able to respond to that, and we need to be able to get up in the you know, at whatever hour, and, you know, rescue that person and that child and whatever, and provide for them. So that was always my mantra, and so that's why I also supported community-grown organizations like Seven Dancers that can exercise that flexibility. So anyway, that kind of thinking to me, or you know, if somebody loses a loved one, or you know, a suicide occurs, God, you know, which is the most horrible, that our staff, our people should be able to reach out no matter where you are.
Yeah.
You know, they should be able to reach out, make a phone call, drop in, even in an unofficial capacity, and sit with someone. So anyway, those have always been my maybe not out of the box kind of thinking. So I bring that to the table. I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother, I'm a great-grandmother now, and I think that there are holes that will be left and not be able to be filled. And I don't mean that I'm intending on running forever. It's just that at this time, with this kind of threat and the anxiety level in the community, I think it would be better for me to stay and to be allowed to stay. And hopefully, you know, the community that has a little bit more exposure to what's actually coming our way would see that and elect to keep me here for another term.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting me. You guys aren't so bad.
No,
That's what. Yeah, that's what.
I mean, I'm sure your communications side doesn't think so.
Yeah, but I don't, Because we have had people say, we were told we shouldn't go on this show. And I'm like, why?
We're not gotcha people. I'll give
No.
people a fair shake.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to trick anybody, you know?
Well, we've been in contact and talked for
Yeah.
a long
Yeah.
time. So
Yep. Yeah. Thank you very much, though, for being here.
Yeah.
It really was great.
appreciate it.
All right. We're Sage Against the Machine. I'm Joshua.
I'm Isaac.
And our guest today.
Beverly Cook.
All right.
Honor.